Welcome to the workshop. We've been talking about hand planes a lot, and if you don't know by now, the hand plane is one of my favorite tools of all time. And we determined through lots of checking out different types of hand planes that my favorite one is the one that's sharp. All right, and that's really important. So today I have a very dull hand plane. This is a different type, like a jack plane, I would call it. And it needs to be sharpened. So I'm just gonna show you how I sharpen one. But first, let's check out how it cuts with a pretty dull blade on it. We're gonna just take a rip off of here. Now, while that does take a pretty heavy shaving, it's really jagged and rough. You can see the texture there of all those fibers that are really just shredded, not because they're being cut nice and clean, but because of more brute force just tearing the wood fibers apart. So we're gonna see if we can make an improvement on that. Oh man. This is an old Craftsman plane. I don't know where I got it, but you can tell by looking, it has been abused and misused, probably by me. I can see right here some grinding marks in front of the blade indicating that I had opened up the width of the mouth of this thing so that it can make bigger shavings and take deeper cuts. And that's great because, you know, sometimes you just need one that'll do that. I'm gonna take it apart here quickly for you and show you that it has actually an extra part compared to the other planes we've been talking about. This is a little chip breaker piece. It's screwed on with the giant flathead screw there, and it just helps the chips to break and roll away as you're planing. So we gotta take that off, which is quite easy. And now we just have the blade. It is not all that bad, but it is not sharp at all, and there's no chance you could even cut yourself with this thing, really. Let's make it razor sharp. There are a lot of ways that you can test to see how sharp your knife is. A lot of people use a piece of paper. Oh yeah. I don't think that passes that test. There's a really deep science into the angle of the blade for the purpose at which you're going to plane and how the blade is held in the plane and all kinds of things. I really don't know any information about the reason for the exact angles, so I just try to match whatever the factory angle is on a hand plane, if it still has that factory angle. So I'm just going to match what is here. But the big picture idea is that you need both surfaces that create the edge to be as polished and smooth, and when those two surfaces meet, you'll have a sharp edge. If there's any defects like dents or dings, or even the roughness from your sharpening stone or whatever you use, those defects, when those two surfaces meet, will be a part of the edge, and it'll be jagged like under a microscope, but we want those to be glassy smooth and to produce the sharpest edge. Oh yeah, we're getting a look now. Okay. All right, I see. Not good. I guess we're gonna have to go to school on how to get really good camera shots of a zoomed in edge. I'm using this little, what is this? A magnifier, I guess, made by Tormek. It came with one of the accessories I bought. And just like any good jeweler, I can examine the surface pretty magnified. I don't know how many times this is magnified, but it really shows you how bad it is, even if it looks pretty good. Well, let's get started sharpening. I'm going to be using my Tormek T7, which is a pretty old water-cooled sharpening system, but I really like it, and I've had it for a long time, like 15 years, I think. I'm going to be mounting the blade into this little fixture jig that holds the blade for me, and it rides along a little guide bar that's adjustable for the height, which controls the angle that you sharpen the blade. So let's get that set up. I gotta run over to the sink and fill up my little cup here. I've had this same cup for like 10 years right here. It's not for drinking out of. All right. let's get this blade at the right angle here. Just going to start by sliding it in and getting it setting on the stone. I do have this fancy angle gauge. You can even check for the angle in these little slots and then set the size of your wheel, because the size of the wheel changes as you use up the wheel. And you can set your angle, and you just set it on here and check for the angle that matches. Now, I would have to raise this up. I have it set for 30 degrees right now, which maybe that's an appropriate angle. Let's just find out. All right, there we go. That matches pretty good. So I'm going to use the angle, and then I actually like to just slide the blade like side to side, and it makes a little mark on the stone, and it reveals whether I'm going on the back of the blade or near the edge. And then I make a little adjustment. I think I'm too high, so I can lower it back down a little bit, and then just kind of rub it on the stone again. I think right there, you can see I have a nice wide line compared to that one. I think I'm making contact pretty well across the entire width of the blade. And that's kind of my goal. Now I can also pull it off, and I can really easily see, wow, that actually did really well. That's the angle I want. So I'm going to leave it where it's at right now. And I'm going to lock down these two little set screws to hold this bar in its position. And now I just turn it on and start grinding. I apply a little bit of pressure down on the blade against the stone, but you can be as aggressive as you like. This is a pretty fun little process. I actually really enjoy the sharpening process itself. Not just having sharp tools, but making them sharp is fun to me. I'm really going to run this on the stone until I feel a burr on the backside. But I gotta say, this blade already had a burr on the backside, and it was super dull, so I don't know if I can trust that or not. I'm pressing down pretty firmly, but you can use whatever degree of pressure you like. If you're in a hurry, push down harder. And if you feel like taking your time, then nice light pressure is really what I like to do. Sometimes the stone gets clogged up with the metal that's coming off your blade, and there's a special stone that I use to clean the actual grinding stone. It's made of some kind of material that looks like a sharpening stone, but it's harder than this grinding stone, and you just hold it like that, and you would like press down pretty hard for like 30 seconds or maybe a minute, and it would sort of refresh the surface of the stone. So I do that pretty frequently as well. Right. I always like to wipe the water off of the edge before I kind of examine it so I can really see what's going on. You can see I have fully ground that surface. You can even see the scratch marks in it from the stone, and that's all good. I like to check it out at every stage in the process so I can really wrap my mind around what each step is accomplishing. I can see right now that there is a burr on the backside, and that is a sign that the sharpening has passed all the way through the edge onto the back. I wish you could see what I could see through here, but we're going to have to find some kind of zoom lens or something. Okay. Well, that really wraps up the grinding portion with the Tormek. That was actually super fast. I mean, like it took like maybe 30 seconds or a minute at the most, because this blade wasn't that bad. I have sat here and held knives or chisels in this jig for, I don't know, 10 minutes if they're really, really bad. So even though that seemed really fast, it's not always like that. And as a matter of fact, I keep my high-speed, regular type of grinder right here for the really busted up, beat up chisels, so I can hog away some material quickly, and I don't have to spend forever waiting on this low-speed grinder. Even though it does an excellent job, it is not fast for removing a large amount of material. Now, if you're using a high-speed grinder like this, you can really only touch it across that grinding disc for like 1 second, and then it's getting hot, and then I dip it in some cool water. And maybe I'll show you how to do that, but it's really just as easy as that. You just don't want to get it to where it heats up and turns blue or black looking, because then you've actually altered the temper of the metal, and then it won't stay as sharp as long. I'm going to take the blade out of this jig and put it in this jig. This is a simple angle holding jig that rolls across your sharpening stones. I really like this kind, although this one in particular I'm not in love with. I'm actually looking to buy a different one. Let me show you my stones here. I have one that is coarse. I don't know what grit, but I've had this one about 5 or 6 years, and I have a very fine stone, and I've had this one for like 15 years. I don't know where it came from. I think my stepdad Bob gave this one to me. And as far as I know, you can never wear these things out. This is like a lifetime kind of stone. It has a coarse side as well, but I like this larger coarse one. When you're using traditional sharpening stones, you need to have some sort of specialized solution like this honing solution here or honing oil. I really don't know which one is better. I use both of them so that the material you're removing from the metal on the blade is not stuck down in the surface of the stone. It helps to wash away the actual metal that you're taking off and keep clean parts of the stone revealed to continue to remove material. I use a little straight edge to check the angle here, and it just so happens I got that pretty much perfect at a first try. But I'm going to back it up just a tiny bit. Right, there we go. Basically, for the rough sharpening on the rougher grit stone, I'm going to match the angle that I did on the Tormek. You can see it's really just a matter of lining it up by eye. I'm going to tighten this up with a screwdriver so it doesn't slide out of there. Go ahead and apply some of the solution here. This is a little messy. You're going to get like oily or whatever this stuff is. You're going to get it on you, and it can be a little slippery. This part is just as fun. It's a little bit loud, so I won't talk much while I do it. But you just basically hold some pressure down and rub it across the stone. All right. I am just checking my work. You can see I got this set a little shallow compared to what I did on the Tormek. And I gotta say this too. Come on up. You could even just stop with the Tormek. Like, these extra steps are just to get it sharper and sharper. The Tormek does a great job. If you just did that and then called it a day, you would still be back to work and be making beautiful shavings. I'm just gonna show you how we get it really, really sharp. This really is a handy device. You don't need a Tormek if you have one of these and you're willing to spend a little extra time. It's just so cool that it holds it nice and square. It's easy to hold, and all you do is go back and forth. I mean, it's just a matter of repetition and how long you're willing to stick with it. Now that I have this bevel side of the blade basically done on the coarse stone, I'm gonna flip the blade over and I'm gonna actually hone the backside. Now, I don't need to hone the entire backside. The part that only matters is like the last 1/8 of an inch. But it's hard to just hold 1/8 of an inch on the stone, so I'll probably hold like 1/2 of an inch and concentrate my pressure toward the edge of the blade so that I'm not trying to flatten out a whole bunch of surface that doesn't matter. You can actually see the factory machining marks. They're kind of an arc right there, and they run all the way down the back of the blade. That's basically what we want to remove. And those are basically imperfections in a flat surface. So we'll see if we can make it glossy like a piece of chrome. Here we go with the backside. You can see it's really dirty, and I'm just gonna put my thumb down on it and move back and forth. See if we're achieving some result there. It's cleaned up looking, but it's not removing the milling marks yet. If you're like me, you're going to find just as much satisfaction in making this blade sharp as you do in using the sharp hand plane. There's just something captivating about it to me. I don't know what it is, but I do like it. We're all done with the coarse grit stone. I'm gonna set it aside and switch to a fine grit stone. And we're gonna repeat the same process on the bevel side and on the back side, just refining the scratch pattern. We're making smaller and smaller scratches. That's closer and closer to being not scratched. You can see right in the middle of the blade, there's like a little curved shape area that has not been in contact with the stone yet. And that's because my stones are worn in the middle. And so what's happening is I'm taking a little more material off both edges, and that's actually okay because I don't mind that at all. Okay. The bevel is looking good. I'm going to flip to the back side now and hone it a bit. You might like to find a group of buddies that you work with or that you know that have dull chisels and hand planes. You could start a little Friday night sharpening group. You know, it's pretty relaxing. It's pretty soothing. It makes me want to start talking like Bob Ross, you know. Oh, we're getting a nice little edge on that. Look at that. It's just a happy little blade getting sharp. Gonna be good at cutting wood. That's looking really good. So far, we've had this in the fixture at the same angle, and I'm gonna just hold my little straight edge up here to show you really nicely. Hopefully you can see what's going on there. Of course they line up because I've been running it across a grinding stone there. Now what I'm gonna do is put a micro bevel on the edge. You can do that in the Tormek, but honestly, it takes the material off so quickly, I've found that it's just not as practical. It just grinds the front of it off too much. And so what I'm gonna do is actually move this little angle holding jig towards the blade, the cutting edge, maybe, I don't know, 1/2 of an inch or something, until I'm satisfied with a little bit of a micro bevel, and then we'll run it on the fine stone and we'll be done grinding. Good. Get it finger tight. I'm gonna have to draw a little picture because it's so small you can't even see this micro bevel thing we're talking about. If that's our primary bevel, then I'm gonna come across at an angle about like that. And just the very cutting edge will be re-honed at a steeper angle. That's really all I need to get for the micro bevel. It's really only about a 1/16 inch wide flat spot that we have there. And doing that has produced a burr on the back again, so I'm gonna re-hone this back surface. Really just a couple passes like that will do the job. As far as I know, the last step is to run it on the Tormek on the stropping wheel to polish this thing up. It will literally look like chrome or like a mirrored surface. We're going to be using the stropping wheel, and if you don't know what that is, it's simply a piece of leather wrapped around a wheel that would replace what you might imagine in an old Western movie where cowboys are sitting around a campfire and they take their belt off and they take their knife and they go back and forth. You might maybe think of a barber shop with an old style razor that they, go back and forth. And the purpose of that is to be able to refine the edge. If you have a burr or any just super minor imperfection, it will actually just kind of rub the burr off, because the burr is just a little remainder, a piece of metal that no matter how many times you sharpen it will still be this like little piece that's stuck to the edge that you need to get rid of. I'm going to use this honing solution here, or actually honing compound, that is some kind of abrasive. I don't know what's in this stuff, but really the piece of leather just by itself doesn't do a great job without a product like this applied to it. I'm just going to try to match the flatness of the back of the plane blade. I really don't want to tip it up at an angle because that will actually dull it and remove my very sharp edge right now. And then I'm going to flip over and do the bevel side, and I just start a little bit flat and then I bring it up till I see that gap disappear. Now we're honing the bevel side. I basically am trying to hold it flat with the bevel angle. I may vary a little bit, but that's okay. Sometimes I'll take the guide out and move it around to the honing side of things. I don't always do this, but just to show you that you can hold it on the bevel pretty easily if you have something like this to rest on. It just makes it easier to basically hold the perfect angle. I could even do this with that fixture that I used on the stone, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to go ahead and examine the edge again with my little magnifier. And while I can still see some of the scratches from the Tormek and from our sharpening stones, the edge is looking very good, pretty polished. I see some minor defects, which for this plane will not matter at all. You could do this to whatever degree makes you happy. And you may be able to tell I'm always moving the blade around to get the light to catch it just right to reveal to me any imperfections. I think we're done. So I'm going to show you how I test really quickly for myself. You don't have to do this, but I like just barely push it against my thumbnail. I'm talking the ever so slightest amount of pressure, and I'll glide it back and forth, and I can tell there's no imperfection. And it has what I call tack. It doesn't slide across my nail. It can't. It'll dig in. And of course, I'm not pressing at all, but that really freaks some people out. So don't try that at home, kids. Let's try the paper test, I guess. Let's see what we got. That's working pretty good, but let's actually try it in the plane and cut some wood. I got the chip breaker reinstalled right there. I'm gonna drop it in carefully now because I don't want to ding up my real nice sharp edge. Drop the cap on here, lever it down. All right, we're ready to cut wood. Still pretty nasty looking. By the way, if I was really gonna care, I would clean up the base of this, but for today, we don't care. Taking a few get off me. I'm taking a few cuts here, and I can tell you it feels very sharp, and what that really means is like I have to put less effort and less muscle into this thing to get the same cut. I can also just tell by looking at the board after I made a cut that it's super slick looking. I mean, it's like perfect for finish. You wouldn't even sand a piece like that, although I will say probably this plane is made for rough work more than finish work. Okay, I'm comparing my shavings here from before, which are really jagged with a lot of little stringy bits hanging off, to the ones now that are nice and smooth and glossy and beautiful looking. So I know I've got a great sharp edge. I sharpen hand planes and chisels like this almost every day, and it really helps me in my daily work to have a sharp tool. I hope you enjoyed this, and I gotta say, if you do this and get good at it, don't tell your friends. Unless you want to sharpen all their stuff too, because my whole crew, Jason, Ray, Jono, Max, Eric, and Arlo, all call me or give me their tools when they're dull. So I'm like the sharpen everybody's chisel guy. All right, now you may not want to do that. So if you want to keep it to yourself, don't tell anybody how sharp and beautiful and enjoyable your hand plane is, or you'll have to do a lot more work. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. Catch you next time.